Good evening, my foreign friends. I am Lino. If you think working longer hours automatically makes a country stronger, this video might change your mind. Recently, Germany's leaders warned that the country could lose its long-term prosperity if people focus too much on work-life balance and ideas like the 4-day work week. In other words, Germans need to work harder. So what did German workers do? They shut down the country. Right after those comments, German labor unions launched a 48-hour nationwide strike. Buses stopped running. Subways shut down. Trams stopped. Public transportation across the country was paralyzed. And the workers' demands were actually very simple: higher wages and shorter working hours. So the situation became almost symbolic. The government said, "We must work harder." The workers said, "We want to work less." But the real irony appears when you zoom out. German leaders sometimes say their workers should learn from the hardworking spirit of Chinese workers. Meanwhile, millions of Chinese workers dream of having the same labor rights German workers are fighting for. One planet, two completely different realities. In Germany, many workers already think 5 days a week is too much. Labor unions are pushing for 4 days. In China, millions of workers still see 2 days off per week as a luxury. German workers strike because wages are not rising fast enough. In China, when some companies raise salaries slightly, workers sometimes feel deeply grateful. One society is fighting for a better life. Another is simply hoping life doesn't get worse. It almost feels like humanity is living on two different timelines. And here's the strange part. If you look at global trends, most countries are actually moving in the opposite direction, toward shorter working hours. Iceland experimented with the 4-day work week, and the results were surprisingly positive. Productivity didn't fall. In some cases, it even increased. Workers reported better health, lower stress, and higher life satisfaction. The UK has run similar trials. South Korea is discussing a 4.5-day work week. Even Japan, a country famous for extreme overtime culture, has started encouraging companies to give employees 3 days off per week. The data keeps suggesting something uncomfortable. Working longer hours does not necessarily make companies stronger. And here's a question people rarely ask. If longer working hours truly created stronger economies, then the hardest working societies on Earth should also be the richest and happiest. But that's clearly not what we see. Human attention and energy are limited. If you force someone to sit at a desk for 12 hours a day, maybe the first 6 hours are productive. The next 6 hours? A lot of that time is just performing the act of working, not actually producing more value. And honestly, I can tell you this from personal experience. On paper, I technically have weekends, but in reality, I'm always on call. I have to check work messages constantly, and I have to keep my laptop with me everywhere. Even when I travel with my family, the laptop comes with me. At any moment, I might need to open it and deal with work. Sometimes I'm even reporting work progress to my boss in the middle of the night. So let me ask a simple question. When exactly am I supposed to rest? When do I actually recover my energy? When do I have the motivation to go out and spend money? Most of the time, I don't want to shop. I don't want to go out. Honestly, I just want to lie in bed and not move at all. And many Americans might already feel something similar. People are working longer hours than ever, yet somehow many feel poorer than their parents did. Which raises a serious question. Are we actually working more just to stand still? And this leads to a bigger economic problem. The world today doesn't suffer from too little production. In fact, global production capacity is already more than enough. The real issue is something else. Who can actually afford to buy the products? If people are forced to work all the time, they simply don't have time to consume. No time to travel. No time to shop. No time to enjoy life. And when people don't consume, domestic demand becomes weak. If demand is weak, companies can't sell enough. And when companies can't sell enough, they start cutting costs. And what's the easiest cost to cut? Labor. Workers are pushed to work longer hours for less reward, which leaves them with even less time and energy to consume. And the cycle repeats again and again. So when you compare different societies, something interesting appears. In Germany, when leaders tell workers to work more, workers can say no. In some other places, when bosses demand more work, workers simply cannot say no. Both systems talk about productivity. But what they are really talking about is something deeper: power. Because a healthy economy doesn't just depend on productivity. It also depends on whether workers have the power to refuse. The moment workers lose the ability to say no, work stops being cooperation and starts becoming obedience. If a country truly wants stronger domestic consumption and a healthier economy, there is one condition people often ignore. Not stimulus checks. Not advertising campaigns telling people to spend more. Something much simpler. Workers must be able to rest without fear. Because people only spend money when they have time, energy, and a sense of security about the future. If rest becomes a luxury, consumption will always remain weak. And without consumption, economic growth becomes a very fragile illusion. So here's the real question. Do strong economies come from working longer hours, or from giving people a life worth living outside of work? I'm curious what you think.